Have you ever done something so small, so careless, that you didn't even think twice about it, only to realize later it changed everything? For Ryan, it started on a night that felt like all the others. The house was quiet, too quiet. Emma had been asleep for hours, her bedroom door slightly open, a soft glow of star-shaped lights spilling into the hallway. Ryan sat alone on the couch, his phone in one hand, the TV playing something he wasn't really watching. Sleep wouldn't come. It hadn't come easily in years. Out of habit more than intention, he opened a dating app, something he had avoided for a long time. 7 years of marriage, followed by a messy divorce, had left him with little desire to start over. But loneliness has a way of quietly pushing you forward, even when you're not ready. Profiles blurred together. Faces, names, short descriptions, none of it really registered. His thumb moved automatically, swiping left, 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 occasionally right, without much thought behind it. He wasn't looking for anything serious. He wasn't even sure he was looking at all. Just passing time. At some point his eyes grew heavy. The room felt warmer, quieter, his movements slowed, less precise. Another face appeared on the screen, familiar maybe, but his tired mind didn't stop to question it. Swipe right. A small, meaningless action. Or at least that's what it seemed. Ryan set his phone down and leaned back, closing his eyes for just a moment. The world faded into silence, and within minutes he was asleep. He had no idea that a single careless swipe, made in a half-dreaming state, had just set something in motion he wouldn't be able to undo. And by morning, everything would feel different. Morning didn't ease anything, it made it worse. Ryan was halfway through his first sip of coffee when his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He glanced at it casually, expecting a work notification or maybe a reminder. Instead, he froze. So this is how you re-enter the dating world. The message sat there, simple and harmless on the surface, but the name attached to it made his stomach drop instantly. Melissa. For a second his brain refused to process it. Then the memory hit him all at once, the late-night scrolling, the blurred faces, the careless swipe. His grip tightened around the mug. No, 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 he muttered under his breath. Across the table, Emma looked up from her cereal, eyebrows lifting slightly. Daddy. He exhaled sharply and set the cup down a little too hard. It's nothing, he said quickly, forcing a calm tone. Just work stuff. But it wasn't work, not even close. His mind raced ahead, already imagining the consequences. Melissa wasn't just anyone, she was Caitlin's sister, which meant this wasn't just awkward, it was dangerous territory. If she told Caitlin, and she probably would, this could spiral into something much bigger than a simple mistake. He rubbed his face with both hands, trying to think clearly. Maybe he could ignore it, pretend he hadn't seen the message. But that felt worse. Silence could easily be misunderstood, and Melissa didn't seem like the type to let something like this go unanswered. Another notification appeared. I didn't expect to see you there, Ryan. There was no anger in the words, but there was something else, curiosity, maybe even amusement. That almost made it worse. Ryan leaned back against the counter, staring at the screen as if it might somehow fix itself. One careless swipe. That's all it took. And now he was standing in his kitchen, trying to figure out how to explain to his ex-wife's sister that he hadn't meant to show interest in her. Yeah, he muttered to himself, this is bad. Not catastrophic, not yet. But definitely, the kind of situation that had the potential to become something much bigger than it should be. Ryan stood there for a long moment, phone in hand, staring at the message as if it might disappear if he waited long enough. It didn't. Ignoring it was still an option. He could lock his phone, walk away, pretend none of this had happened. But the more he thought about it, the clearer it became. Silence would only make things worse. Melissa would notice. Melissa would wonder. And sooner or later, Caitlin would hear about it. No, avoiding it wasn't a solution. It was just delaying the problem. He exhaled slowly and unlocked his phone again. Just be honest, he told himself. His fingers hovered over the screen as he started typing. Hey, sorry about that. Delete. Too casual. Melissa, I didn't mean to. Delete. Too defensive. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. Why did something so simple feel so complicated? Because it wasn't just a message. It was history. It was family. It was everything that had happened over the past few years, condensed into one awkward moment. Finally, he stopped overthinking it and typed what felt closest to the truth. Melissa, I owe you an apology. I was half asleep last night and didn't realize it was your profile. It was completely accidental and honestly pretty embarrassing. I hope you didn't take it the wrong way. He read it twice. Not perfect but real. That would have to be enough. Before he could second-guess himself again, he hit send. The message whooshed away, and with it any chance of taking it back. Ryan set the phone down on the counter and stepped away, as if creating distance would somehow lessen the tension. He picked up a towel and wiped an already clean spot, his mind racing. What if she didn't believe him? What if she thought he was covering something up? What if... His phone buzzed. Too fast. He turned back slowly, bracing himself as he picked it up. Her reply was already there. Wow, that's one way to make a girl feel unforgettable. Ryan winced, his stomach tightening again. Great, he defended her. But before he could respond or panic further, another message appeared. Relax, I'm kidding. He blinked. Then, honestly, I was surprised, but not in a bad way, maybe even a little flattered. Ryan stared at the screen, unsure how to process that. This wasn't how he expected the conversation to go. No anger. No accusation. No awkward confrontation. Instead, something lighter. Something almost playful. And just like that, the tension that had been building since morning shifted, slightly but noticeably. Maybe this wasn't going to turn into a disaster after all. Or maybe it was just the beginning of something he hadn't anticipated. Ryan didn't reply right away. He read Melissa's message again, then once more, as if the meaning might change. It didn't. The tone was unmistakable, light, teasing, unexpectedly warm. Not what he had prepared for. For years, his image of Melissa had been fixed in place. Sharp, distant, always just slightly out of reach. Someone who observed more than she spoke, and when she did speak, it was usually with precision. Now this felt different. Less guarded. More human. He typed slowly this time, choosing his words with more care. You had me worried for a second. A few seconds passed. That's fair, she replied. I probably would have panicked too. Ryan let out a quiet breath, something between relief and disbelief. The tension was easing. Not gone, but softening. So we're okay, he added. There was a pause before her answer came. We're okay. It's not every day your ex-brother-in-law accidentally likes your profile. I had to enjoy the moment a little. He shook his head, a small smile forming despite himself. Glad I could provide entertainment. You always did, she replied. That line lingered longer than it should have. Ryan leaned back against the counter, his thoughts shifting. This wasn't just polite conversation anymore. It wasn't forced or obligatory. It was easy. Unexpectedly easy. He hesitated for only a second before continuing. So, how have you been? A simple question, the kind people ask out of habit. But this time it didn't feel like a formality. It felt like he actually wanted to know. Her response didn't come immediately. When it did, it was longer. Busy, traveling a lot for work, different cities every week. It sounds exciting and sometimes it is, but it gets tiring too. Ryan read it carefully, noticing the shift in tone. Less joking. More real. Still doing photography, he asked. Yeah, architecture mostly. Buildings don't move, don't argue, don't complicate things. They're easier to deal with than people. He huffed a quiet laugh. Can't argue with that. Another pause. Then, what about you? How's life treating you these days? Ryan glanced toward the hallway where Emma's room was. He could hear faint movement. She was probably getting ready for school. He looked back at the screen. There were a lot of ways he could answer that question. Safe ones. Short ones, surface level ones. But something about this conversation made those feel unnecessary. It's different, he wrote. A lot quieter than it used to be, but Emma keeps things interesting. He hesitated, then added, she's really into space right now. Our apartment looks like a mini galaxy. This time, Melissa's reply came quickly. That actually sounds amazing. And for the first time since the conversation started, Ryan smiled without tension. What began as a mistake was starting to feel like something else. Not dramatic. Not complicated. Just real. And maybe that was what surprised him the most. What surprised Ryan most wasn't that the conversation continued. It was that it didn't feel forced. There was no obligation, no awkward pauses filled with polite responses. One message led naturally to another, and before he realized it, minutes had turned into an hour. Then another. By the time Emma left for school and Ryan sat down to start his work, his phone was still within reach, something that hadn't been true in a long time. Over the next few days, their conversations didn't fade. They deepened. What began as occasional messages slowly turned into a rhythm. A quiet, unspoken routine, a message in the morning, a few exchanges during the day, longer conversations at night. Eventually, those messages became calls. At first, they kept things light. Work, travel, funny stories. Ryan told her about Emma's latest obsession with the stars, how she insisted on learning the names of constellations and kept asking questions he couldn't answer. Melissa laughed more than he remembered. Not the polite kind of laughter from family dinners, but something genuine, unguarded. In return, she shared stories from her life on the road. Early mornings chasing sunlight across glass buildings, long flights, empty hotel rooms. People think it's glamorous, she said once over the phone, but most of the time it's just quiet. Ryan understood that kind of quiet. Gradually, the surface conversations gave way to something deeper. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed, their call stretched longer than usual. There was a pause, comfortable but heavy with something unspoken. Then Melissa broke it. Do you ever feel like your life didn't turn out the way you expected? Ryan didn't answer right away. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Yeah, he said finally, more often than I'd like to admit. There was no judgment in her silence, just understanding. I thought I'd have it all figured out by now, she said. Relationships, career, everything, but somehow I keep ending up in the wrong situations. Ryan frowned slightly. What do you mean? A quiet sigh came through the phone. I have a habit of choosing people who need fixing, she admitted, and then I stay longer than I should trying to make it work. That hit closer to home than he expected. I think I did the opposite, he said. I stayed because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, even when things weren't working. Another pause. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. From that point on, something shifted. They stopped trying to present polished versions of themselves. Ryan talked about the nights after the divorce, how empty the apartment felt once Emma was asleep, how he buried himself in work just to avoid thinking. Melissa admitted how often she felt like she was living out of a suitcase, never fully belonging anywhere. They didn't try to fix each other. They just listened. And slowly, without either of them saying it out loud, those conversations became something they both started to rely on. Ryan noticed it first. The way he looked forward to her messages. The way his day felt incomplete if they didn't talk. The way her voice, even through a phone, made things feel lighter. Melissa noticed it too. You know, she said one night, her tone softer than usual, this is the most I've talked to anyone consistently in a long time. Ryan smiled faintly. Same. Neither of them labeled it. Neither of them rushed it. But somewhere between late-night calls and honest conversations, the connection between them stopped being accidental and started becoming something real. It was Melissa who brought it up. The message came casually, almost as if it hadn't been sitting in her mind for days. I'll be in your city next month, work trip. Thought I should mention it before it feels weird that I didn't. Ryan stared at the screen longer than necessary. There it was. The shift from safe distance to something real. He could feel it instantly, the difference between talking through a phone and standing face to face. No pauses to think, no time to rewrite a sentence. Just presence. That's not weird, he typed back, unless you make it weird. A few seconds later. So you're saying it's not already weird? He smirked. It's definitely a little weird. Good, as long as we're honest about that. There was a pause. Then, we could meet, coffee or something, neutral ground. Ryan's chest tightened slightly. He knew this moment was coming, still it felt bigger than expected. Meeting her wasn't just meeting someone new. It meant stepping into a situation that blurred lines, past and present, family and something else. He thought about Caitlin, about how this might look, about whether it crossed a boundary that shouldn't be touched. Then he thought about the past few weeks. The conversations, the honesty, the way everything had felt unexpectedly easy. Yet he finally replied, I'd like that. The day came faster than he expected. Ryan arrived early. Not because he planned to, but because sitting at home had become impossible. He had paced his apartment, checked the time too many times and eventually gave up. The cafe was busy, filled with the low hum of conversations and the sharp hiss of espresso machines. He scanned the room once, twice, then he saw her, sitting near the window. For a second he hesitated. She looked familiar but also not. Her hair was longer than he remembered, falling naturally over her shoulders. Her style was effortless, nothing like the carefully structured image he associated with Caitlin. Melissa had always been in the background before. Now she stood out. Ryan took a breath and walked over. Hey, he said. She looked up and her expression shifted instantly, recognition then a small smile. Hey. They both stood there for a moment, caught in that awkward space between familiarity and distance. Should they hug? Shake hands? They ended up doing a slightly clumsy combination of both, which made them laugh. And just like that, the tension cracked. They ordered drinks, black coffee for him, something warmer for her, and found a quiet table in the corner. For a moment there was silence. Not uncomfortable. Just anew. So, she said, wrapping her hands around her cup, you're real. Ryan raised an eyebrow. I was starting to wonder the same about you. She smiled, fair. Another small pause. Then the conversation picked up, almost exactly where it had left off over the phone. Work, travel, Emma. It was easier than Ryan expected. No forced topics, no awkward searching for things to say. Just flow. At one point, she pulled out her phone and showed him photos from her recent projects, buildings caught in perfect light, angles that made ordinary structures look almost artistic. These are incredible, he said honestly. She shrugged lightly. It's mostly about patience, waiting for the right moment. Ryan nodded slowly. Guess that applies to more than just photography. She glanced at him, something thoughtful in her expression. Yeah, she said quietly, it probably does. Time moved faster than it should have. What felt like minutes turned into hours. At some point the background noise faded. The cafe became just a setting, not a distraction. Ryan noticed how easily she laughed. How she listened, really listened, without interrupting. How different she felt from the version of her he thought he knew. And more than that, how natural it felt to be sitting across from her. Eventually, she stirred her drink absently and said, we should probably acknowledge the obvious. Ryan's posture shifted slightly. Caitlin. Yeah, there it was. The one thing they hadn't touched yet. And the one thing that could change everything. Ryan didn't answer her question right away. The mention of Caitlin lingered between them, heavy but unavoidable. He knew this part mattered, the part where reality stepped in and reminded them that whatever this was, it wasn't simple. She doesn't know, he said finally. Melissa nodded, as if she had expected that. I figured, she replied, And honestly, I'm not sure she needs to, not right now. Ryan studied her face, trying to read what she meant. There was no guilt there, no hesitation, just calm certainty. I'm allowed to have coffee with someone, she added, a faint edge in her voice. Even if that someone used to be married to my sister. Ryan let out a quiet breath. Yeah, I guess you are. The tension softened again, but something had shifted. Not in a bad way, just a recognition that they were stepping into complicated territory. By the time they left the cafe, the air between them felt different. Warmer. More certain. I'm in town for a few more days, Melissa said as they stepped outside. We don't have to, but if you wanted to hang out again. I do, Ryan interrupted, surprising even himself. She smiled slightly. Okay, good. There was a brief pause before she added, more carefully this time. I'd actually like to meet Emma, if that's not strange. Ryan expected that question to feel wrong. It didn't. Instead, his first thought was simple. Emma would like her. She remembers you, he said. From visits, she always thought you were the interesting one. Melissa laughed softly. I'll take that as a compliment. So dinner, he suggested. Dinner sounds good. The next evening, Ryan found himself cleaning the apartment with more focus than necessary. Everything had to be just right. Not because Melissa would judge, but because the moment felt important. Emma, on the other hand, was full of energy. You said Aunt Melissa is coming, she asked for what felt like the 10th time. Yeah, Ryan replied, smiling. She's in town for work. Is she bringing anything? Emma asked, eyes hopeful. Ryan raised an eyebrow. We don't invite people over just for presents, you know. I know, she said quickly, but is she? He laughed, we'll see. When the doorbell rang, Emma didn't wait. She ran. Ryan followed behind, slower, but with a steady pulse in his chest. The door swung open. Aunt Melissa. Emma launched herself forward without hesitation. Melissa barely had time to react before she was pulled into a tight hug. Hey you, she said, laughing as she hugged her back. Wow, you got taller. Emma grinned, I know. Ryan leaned against the doorframe for a second, watching the moment. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't forced. It was easy. Melissa stepped inside, holding a small bag and a bottle of wine. I brought something, she said, handing the bag to Emma. Emma's eyes lit up immediately. Inside was a beautifully illustrated book about space, and a small, carefully packaged object. A real meteorite, Emma gasped, staring at it in awe. Melissa nodded. Yep, from actual space. I met someone who collects them and he helped me find that one. Emma looked like she had just been handed the universe. This is the best thing ever, she whispered. Ryan shook his head, smiling. You've officially won. I had good motivation, Melissa said lightly. Dinner was surprisingly normal. Not the kind of normal you force. The kind that just happens. Emma talked more than usual, telling stories about school, her friends, her space projects. Melissa listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. Ryan noticed it immediately. Emma was comfortable. More than that, she was open. It wasn't something she did with most adults. But with Melissa, it came naturally. At one point, Emma turned to Ryan and said, She's cool, can she come again tomorrow? Ryan nearly choked on his drink. Melissa laughed, let's not rush your dad too much. Okay, Emma said, thinking for a moment, but soon. Soon, Melissa promised. Later after dinner, as Emma got ready for bed, Ryan stood in the kitchen watching Melissa rinse a glass. You didn't have to bring all that, he said quietly. She shrugged, I wanted to. It meant a lot to her. I can tell, she said, glancing toward the hallway. She's a good kid. Ryan nodded, she is. There was a brief silence. Then Melissa added, softer now. You're doing a really good job with her. Ryan didn't respond immediately. Because hearing that mattered more than he expected. Thanks, he said finally. When Emma was tucked into bed and the apartment grew quiet again, something settled into place. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just right. And for the first time, Ryan allowed himself to think something he had been avoiding. This wasn't just a coincidence anymore. Melissa wasn't just part of his past. She was becoming part of his present. And maybe something more. After Emma fell asleep, the apartment grew quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet Ryan was used to. This one felt shared. Melissa stood by the window for a moment, looking out at the city lights below. Ryan watched her from the kitchen, noticing how naturally she seemed to fit into the space, like she had been there more than just one evening. "You've got a nice place," she said softly. Ryan leaned against the counter. "It's mostly Emma, I just pay for it." She smiled slightly, still looking outside. "It feels warm." That word stayed with him. Warmth. It wasn't something anyone had used to describe his life in a long time. They moved to the living room, settling onto opposite ends of the couch at first. Not distant, but not close either. Balanced. For a while they talked about simple things again. Her next trip, his work schedule, plans for the weekend. But underneath it, something was shifting. It was in the pauses. In the way their conversations slowed, stretched, and lingered just a little longer than necessary. At some point, Melissa tucked her legs slightly under herself, turning more toward him. "So," she said quietly, "are we going to pretend this is completely normal?" Ryan exhaled through a faint smile. "Depends, do you want it to be?" She tilted her head, studying him. "I think it was normal," she said, "at first. And now?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, her gaze dropped briefly, to his hands, then back to his eyes. "Now I think we're past pretending this is just accidental." The air changed. Not dramatically, but enough. Ryan felt it, the awareness, the closeness, the unspoken question hanging between them. He shifted slightly, leaning forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Yeah," he admitted, "it doesn't feel accidental anymore." Melissa nodded, almost to herself. "Good," she said, "because I was starting to think I was the only one noticing." A small silence followed. Not awkward, but heavier. More honest. "Does that bother you?" Ryan asked after a moment. "What part?" "All of it," he said, "how this looks, what it could turn into." She considered that. "It should bother me," she said slowly. "On paper, this is exactly the kind of situation I'd tell someone to avoid." Ryan let out a quiet breath. "Same." "But," she added, her voice softening, "that's not how it feels." He looked at her. "Then how does it feel?" Melissa held his gaze this time. "Easy," she said. "Real, like I don't have to filter everything I say or think about how it'll be taken." Ryan nodded slightly. "I get that. And that scares me a little," she admitted. Because things that feel this natural don't usually come without complications." Ryan leaned back into the couch, letting that sink in. She wasn't wrong. Nothing about this was simple. There were layers, history, family, expectations. Consequences. But at the same time, walking away didn't feel simple either. "So what do we do?" he asked. Melissa didn't hesitate. "We don't rush it," she said. "We don't label it, and we definitely don't pretend it's something it's not." Ryan watched her closely. "And what is it?" A small, almost uncertain smile touched her lips. "Something we're still figuring out." Another pause. This one quieter. Softer. Ryan noticed the distance between them now, not emotional but physical. A few inches. Nothing more. It would be easy to close it. Too easy. He didn't move. Neither did she. But neither of them looked away. After a moment, Melissa let out a small breath and leaned back slightly, breaking the tension, but not completely. "I should probably go," she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't in a hurry. "Probably," Ryan agreed. Neither of them stood up right away. When they finally did, the moment lingered again at the door. Familiar. Unresolved. Melissa picked up her coat, pausing as she turned back to him. "Tonight was really nice," she said. "Yeah," Ryan replied, "it was." Another pause. Then softer. Good night, Ryan. Good night, Melissa. She stepped out. The door closed. And just like that, the apartment was quiet again. But not empty. Ryan stood there for a moment, staring at the door, replaying everything. The conversation, the tension, the way it all felt just on the edge of becoming something more. Nothing had happened. Not technically. But something had definitely changed. The line between what this was and what it could become was starting to disappear. The next day didn't feel light anymore. Not like before. Ryan noticed it the moment he woke up. There was no excitement this time, no easy anticipation of a message or a call. Just one clear thought. This couldn't stay hidden forever. Melissa felt it too. They met again, but something had changed. Not in how they spoke. Not in how they looked at each other. But in what they were both thinking and no longer saying out loud. They chose a quieter place this time. A park away from noise, away from people who might recognize them. For a while they walked side by side in silence. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. I've been thinking, Melissa said finally. Ryan nodded slightly, me too. She stopped walking. So let's not pretend anymore, she said, turning to face him. This isn't just something casual. No, Ryan agreed, it's not. And that means, she continued, more carefully now, it's going to affect more than just us. There it was. The truth they had been circling around from the beginning. Caitlin. Family. History. Ryan exhaled slowly. I don't want to hurt anyone, he said. Melissa's expression softened, neither do I. But avoiding this doesn't fix anything either. She looked at him for a long moment. No, she said quietly, it doesn't. A breeze moved through the trees, leaves shifting softly around them. Everything felt still, but important. Like the kind of moment that doesn't look big from the outside, but changes everything inside. So what are we doing? Ryan asked. Melissa didn't answer right away. Because this wasn't about feelings anymore. They both already knew those were real. This was about choice. We do this the right way, she said finally. Ryan frowned slightly, and what does that mean? It means no hiding, she replied. No pretending this didn't happen, no secrets. He held her gaze. That won't be easy. I know, she said, but if we start this the wrong way, it won't matter how real it feels. It'll fall apart anyway. Ryan looked away for a moment, thinking. She was right. As much as he wanted to keep things simple, keep her separate from everything else, life didn't work like that. Not this time. And if it goes badly, he asked. Melissa gave a small, honest smile. It probably will. He almost laughed. Yeah, sounds about right. But that doesn't mean it's wrong, she added. That was the moment everything became clear. Not easier, but clearer. Ryan stepped a little closer. Not rushed. Not uncertain. Just enough to close the space between them. I don't want to walk away from this, he said. Melissa's eyes didn't leave his. Neither do I. No dramatic gestures. No perfect timing. Just a quiet, steady decision. Then we don't, Ryan said. They stood there for a second longer. Then Melissa nodded. Then we don't. And somehow that was enough. Because in the end, this wasn't a story about mistakes. It wasn't about one accidental swipe, or awkward timing, or complicated connections. It was about something much simpler and much harder. Choosing honesty over comfort. Choosing risk over safety. Choosing something real, even when it's inconvenient. Some people spend years waiting for the right moment. The perfect situation. The easy path. But the truth is, the things that matter most rarely come that way. Ryan and Melissa didn't know what would happen next. They didn't know how others would react. They didn't know if this would last. But for the first time in a long time, they knew one thing for sure. They weren't running from it anymore. And sometimes, that's where the real story begins.